have, for those of you, so we're being recorded, and for those of you joining us online, we do have 2 audience members, and our planning commission member Donna is joining us remotely. So in the case of the emergency, if you're in the room, you can exit out of the back of the building and go either direction. Sarah, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Paul looks like he's working on the,
There it is.
ooh,
Also
that's
speak loud.
scary,
I've got these in now.
scary loud.
I can turn
Okay.
it up with this machine. You see that?
That's quite fancy. Okay, any changes to the agenda? Okay, open to the public for items not related to the agenda. Does anyone have anything? Okay, then announcements. You look
Yeah.
like you're raring to go, Michael.
Yes. Just wanted to make everybody aware of Bill H-68, which is a housing bill, which has got quite a lot of good things in it, in that it's focused, it's trying to remove barriers to development in town and city centers, cores for housing, but it's got also a lot of bad things in it from our point of view, because some of the provisions would clearly undo quite a bit of the good work we've done on environmental protection, and certainly undermines quite a bit of what we've done on the climate action plan. I don't want to go into detail, but H-68 is something that's wending its way through the legislature, and I'm very concerned, and other members of the community are very concerned about the impact it will have on South Burlington's environmental protection standards and our plan. Well, if the bill is passed as it is, we will never get to our targets on emission reductions.
And just to be clear, it's a Vermont State
It's a
House
Vermont State
Bill
bill, yes.
68.
H-68, yeah.
So I wanted to comment on that too,
Andrew.
and wondering if this should be an agenda item for next time or how we progress this, and I'm really interested in Paul's thoughts, and if this is in the appropriate form, let me know. But the way I read the bill, it talks about in a district that has water and sewer that allows residential development, bill says you need to allow 5 units per acre. I think that overrides our NRP zones because we allow residential development, there's sewer and water. I think that overrides our conservation PUDs. And if it does all that, it's a complete disaster. So, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that. Again, we don't need to talk about it now, but those are the things that concern me. And then there's another provision which talks about allowing ADUs with a narrow exception. It says an ADU an accessory dwelling unit should be allowed anywhere except if it would violate flood hazard or fluvial erosion rules. But we have lots more environmental protections than that. So I think this would say they can be on habitat blocks and et cetera, et cetera. So that was another piece of this that really, really concerned me. And I'd love, again, a view on that.
It could also devalue or eliminate the value of TDRs.
Well, if it overrides the
If it-
NRP areas, it would certainly do that.
Okay, and I guess, we haven't at this point that I know of given like planning commission feedback on bills, but it's maybe, are you suggesting
right.
that
So I
maybe
guess the
after
question
we
is,
understand something you might be interested in?
so the question is, I mean, look, this is maybe moving too quickly for a normal process like that. And by the time we do review it, it may well have changed. So I don't know what the exact right process is, but I guess I wanted to suggest that South Burlington, and maybe starting here, think about what that process is. How do we provide timely, meaningful input on this bill?
You have a comment?
Sure, go ahead, Donna.
that bill actually came out in the Environment and Energy Subcommittee, which is pretty odd considering how damaging a lot of its provisions seem to be to environment and energy. It's not coming from the housing, housing and well, the committee that deals with housing that's not where it came from. And it was introduced by Baumgart's, who I think is from Addison County. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but where Baumgart's is from.
Manchester, Sarah is saying, Manchester.
Yeah, and it's just, so the only thing you can really do is kind of get into that committee and find out why they aren't working with. There's a whole lot of provisions because I'm on a public policy committee for AIA Vermont. And there's some stuff in there that is just like totally off the wall in terms of the way processes work in the state. So we're hoping it doesn't go anywhere.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Just-
turning
I've
this
heard that it
down.
has a lot of momentum.
Right, so maybe we could start with some of the questions about process with some feedback from Paul, who's.
Sure. So the planning commission or council are both welcome to provide feedback to outside groups, including the legislature if you choose. Oftentimes when an organization, whether it's a city or a group like the AIA Vermont or the League of Cities and Towns provides feedback, they provide sort of principles of what they're after. Because as you indicated, Andrew, bills move so fast that talking about individual wording, by the time an organization has feedback, it's 3 cycles past. But if a group wanted to say, here are a subject area of concern that need to be addressed, rather than referring to specific language or proposing specific language, that's certainly in your prerogative. We are, as in my role as planning director and in her role as city manager, certainly Jesse and myself are watching this bill as well to see from our professional viewpoints, where are there, how can we participate through our organization?
Have you seen that, Bill?
I have, yeah.
Do you share the concerns that I expressed, or am I getting it wrong?
I think that the accessory dwelling unit appears to be intended to mostly clarify that they're allowed where homes are allowed, but that doesn't mean the language is right. I think that appears to be the intent. I would say that it regarding the areas served by water and sewer, when a bill is introduced, it often brings a broad statement with it, and then figuring out where it is working and not working is what testimony is for. And so examples like natural resources of importance would be good testimony to provide. It doesn't necessarily mean that the language itself is that the idea is incorrect necessarily. It may be that it's too broad, for example.
So we can get some, but I guess I would really be interested in your professional opinion as to whether it overrides our careful zoning with NRP and conservation PUDs.
I think that that's a level of detail that I would have to go into a little more, because it's an important question, but it's a big question that I don't know that I can just say, because I've been looking at it at a 10,000 foot level, sort of assuming it's going to be modified and changed. So I haven't been sort of right down to, is this going to override South Burlington's NRP? But I think it's worth tracking for that.
So Andrew and Michael, I guess from a process standpoint, like, do you think that it's moving so fast that it would not, like, I guess I'm just wondering, like, if at our next meeting, we had a discussion on some language to give some general feedback about natural resources protected at the local level or something like that, because we do have some natural resource protection areas that are a little different than other places in the state. It might be good to just make sure.
Look, I
There-
think
I mean,
that
I
at a
don't
minimum,
know.
we should do that. And I'd love to to collectively parse this carefully to see exactly what it does and come to some agreement on that. It may be too late, it may not, it sounds important nonetheless. I will tell you, I mean, separately, a number of us are trying to do things ahead of that, just individually, but I think my own perspective would be it's important for us to do as a body what we can do in our time frame, because this is, I see this as really potentially very detrimental to our city.
Do you think it would progress like beyond the committee and go to like a full house vote by the time? I
think
mean, is
it's-
that what you're concerned?
My understanding is it still needs to hit various other committees. And so at least I would hope that there would be some time before it goes to a full house vote. On the other hand, I'm hearing from various sources that there's a lot of momentum behind this, that it's
Yeah.
been in the works for a year and a lot of voices already heard. Not ours, obviously, but so I don't know, there's like two competing streams, and which of those streams is going to win out?
I would
It
not
has about
expect,
20 or 30 sponsors. You know, it's a one size fits all kind of bill, which most of it doesn't apply to us because we don't have the barriers that the bill tries to remove. Other towns may, but it would be, the way it reads, as I said, would be pretty disastrous for us. So the process of how to get, as Andrew said, how do we get this slowed down or changed?
Well, I guess, like from our body and what we could do, you know, we don't have an agenda item for it. I don't know that we could take like some kind of official action tonight, but what we could do is if there's enough of us that feel like it's important, we can make a decision as a group to address it as an agenda item at our next meeting, if that's appropriate. And I know we already have some things scheduled. I don't know, Kelsey, if you feel like we would have time for a discussion on this.
Yes, it can't be something that takes the whole meeting. It's the next meeting is when we start getting into the meat of reviewing some draft sections and language for the comp plan. So that's sort of a train that's already going. Just to say, you wouldn't have 2 hours to discuss it. I think you could easily have half an hour or 45 minutes. I just wanted to point out just a quick logistics item, with the question of timing. January is actually a 5 Tuesday month, this month. So our next meeting is not in 2 weeks, it's in 3.
Oh,
Oh,
It's not, the next meeting would be February 14th, which is 3 weeks from today, not 2.
I mean, it's important. Can we squeeze it out on him?
can we meet February 7th? People are willing to do that.
I'm up.
I believe we already have a public listening session scheduled. I don't have that schedule up in front of me, but I believe that is the one Tuesday that we did schedule a listening session.
8th.
There's also one on the 8th.
I think starting in February, there's like multiple.
There's a
ones of
lot.
them a week.
I think we have 7, 8, and 9, if I'm remembering correctly, all scheduled for public listening sessions.
So that leaves 6th and 10th that week.
I suppose, or the 31st, which is soon. I don't know.
What,
Yeah,
the listening sessions run from what time?
7 to 8:30. But some are piggybacking on other committee meetings, so they may start at 6:30 and they may go after 8:30. They're all scheduled for room 301, so they're not in here. But the DRB is in here on the 7th.
I think the 31st would make a lot of sense for this, if people were willing to do that.
like, it's up to you all, because, you know, this is an instance where we will obviously happily staff the meeting, but the drafting should come from you all
Yeah,
as
yeah,
to
yeah.
what you want to say. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Um,
we'll be there.
Yeah.
You just tell us if you would like to meet.
Okay, do an analysis then of the bill for us.
I think that this is an instance where the voice of what you want to say really needs to come from you all. Because any input that I give really needs to be from my role and not sort of for you all.
No, sure, but I'd love just to, I guess,
Professional.
get some consensus on what this means, and then we could then react to it. In other words, if, again, if, I think this overrides our NRP, and I'd love to know if you agree.
I mean, I think it's very reasonable for us to say, we are concerned that
Yeah.
this could override as written. We want to make sure that that is
Yes.
not the
Right,
case.
I think that
I
that
think
would be,
that's-
given how much language can change, my suggestion
fair.
would be, if you want to make a statement like that, because then you can make it slightly more broad than just South
Mm.
Burlington. You could, and it doesn't have to be an analysis of our rules.
Okay.
You could say, we are concerned that tools deployed, for example, in South Burlington, such as blank, 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 could be. And then you're not sort of relying on, you know, them coming back and saying, oh, well, our legal counsel said that this, if we tweak it in this way, South Burlington's covered, but Stowe is equally in trouble.
By the way, I do have, if anyone would like, just if you want, I have a copy of the bill.
Oh, okay, that actually.
And I
sounds
also
quite
have
nice.
a markup that I made of the provisions that I thought were, which you can keep.
I've
too,
never
too, but
seen a paper copy of a bill like that. I don't know where you
Really?
found
Oh,
that, Andrew.
it's right
I have some
here.
connections.
No, I kind of feel like that one's more useful.
but
You get both.
to Donna's question, I'm under the understanding that the bill will move to the housing and committee when it's at some point fairly soon.
Yeah, and Emily Krasno is on the housing committee.
Yeah. That's from whom we heard
She's,
that.
yeah, she's in my district and
And
Sort of.
in full disclosure, I've met with Emily, and some of us have met with her a few times already around this bill. And she's very sympathetic to the concerns that have been.
Yeah, there was a legislative forum last night, which.
So I
which this was
guess,
discussed.
I guess what
So-
I would say is we're taking up a bunch of time talking about this. I think we just decided that we will add an additional meeting January 31st. Staff can help us with getting it warned with an agenda item for discussion and possible feedback. But if it might be helpful if either Andrew or Michael, because you brought it forward, to maybe have some talking points or some written bullets, maybe ahead of the meeting, so we could like think about it.
Does January 31st work for everybody?
What
January 31st work for everybody?
It's okay with me.
works for me?
Don't you have
Just
something
for
on
the
the 31st?
record, guys,
Yeah, kick off.
there is a Board of Abatement and Board of Civil Authority meeting that night.
Okay, thanks, Sue. We'll make sure that we're not in the same room as that.
So January 31st at 7?
I have just emailed around the bill as introduced. It's a PDF. That's a link to the PDF on the state,
And introduced on the House side?
the House.
Okay, my understanding is that it is being talked about, but has not formally been introduced on the Senate side.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, we will keep you, we will send out an agenda. It may be in a different room, because we just haven't looked at all the room bookings yet, but we'll find a space in the
Totally
building for
fine.
you.
Yeah, the building would be helpful, but rooms.
You'll get
fine.
you'll get a spot in the building, no matter what.
And a couple other things I just want to.
Yep, go ahead.
One, I guess I've submitted a petition to run for city council.
I saw that in the other
I
paper.
just want to let folks know. And my friend may have an announcement as well.
So did I.
Oh, wow.
My-
Okay.
My announcement will be in this week's paper.
Sinking ship.
Yeah, you'd have, well, actually, I guess it's a question. If you would get on, would you have to leave the planning commission or you'd,
It's okay.
yeah, okay. Well, I
We'll-
guess I
We'll
don't have
appoint
any
some good-
comment on
we'll
that.
appoint some
right
good people.
You would have to.
Yeah,
And then I did attend a meeting of the Climate Action Implementation Plan Advisor Group meeting for transportation. Good attendance. you know, a lot
Andrew,
of
can
good
you
dis-
talk into
A
a
lot of good,
microphone?
discussion. I attended the kind of transportation advisory group meeting #1. A lot of good discussion. Looking forward to having things pulled together, I think, a little more and less next meeting. It was a little unfocused, I thought, but that's okay for an introductory meeting. I did want to, and I love to talk with Paul. We don't have to do that now, just in terms of scope and just understand the instruction to the group, because it was a little unclear to me actually what the people thought they should be focusing on. So I just want to have that discussion.
Any other announcements? Anything else from staff? I saw the note about the community conversation calendar.
Yeah.
In the agenda.
Yeah, so that the community, the full schedule of our public listening sessions for the comprehensive plan has been published in the other paper. It would have come out last Thursday. Basically every week from now until halfway through, 2/3 of the way through March, there'll be another ad that'll go out. It won't be the full page that it was this time. But it will be outlining which meetings are coming up for the following week. Our first meeting will be next Thursday, February 2nd. We are intending to send around an electronic sign-up sheet of some form, likely tomorrow morning, for planning commissioners to let us know which of the listening sessions they are planning to attend, so that we can make sure that we're really getting at least a commissioner, if not a few, to each of the listening sessions. So that email will go out in the morning, and everybody can sign up for what they intend to do.
And just to plug for the very first one, the first one we're calling Public Safety, Public Works and Basic Needs. And I'm pretty excited about this one. It's a little bit outside of often what the commission focuses on, but it is a big part of what the community does. And I think our big hope and objective is to, with our facilitator, hear from folks about what are the needs in our community? What are we doing well? And, looking forward in the next decade, what are we not doing so well? And what are the needs in our community that need to be met? And where that will follow on to you all as your discussion, and we may get into that evening, using slightly wonkier words, what the resulting work for us is what should be core government work. Our city manager likes to remind groups that technically under Vermont law, municipalities have to plow roads, have to maintain a grand list, and have to run elections. Everything else that a town or city does is a choice that community has made. And so as we think about how do we want to evolve to meet the needs of the next decade, all the things that we do outside of those three are choices that have been made in the past. What are the choices of the future? So, yeah, very exciting. I have a couple of additional updates, if that's okay. One, speaking of things that the community does, the council last week adopted the fiscal year 24 budget. So that will be on the March ballot, alongside with some votes that you're going to be hearing about some of them this evening. The council has given the city manager and staff guidance to begin doing some initial work on two subject areas. One is regulating fuels in existing buildings to learn about the city's authority and begin to delve into that. And then the second is under sort of a broad category that I would describe as being rental registry / short-term rentals / inspection of single-family homes / rentals, like that. They're all sort of connected issues, beginning to look into that that the city doesn't presently do.
Question, would second homes which are only occupied for a short period of the year be something that could go into that basket? Meaning that, that it came up in one of the other meetings that I've attended, that these second homes reduce the housing stock significantly, and they're only used part of the year. Other municipalities that I know of have quite successfully taxed those properties very differently to discourage.
Yeah, I think, Michael, the tenor of the council conversation on this was to look at the subject holistically. So I think that's a good addition to looking at the subject holistically. The council last night held their public hearing and adopted an amendment to the city's impact fee ordinance that will assign a a school impact fee that will be charged to pay for the a large portion of the the zero energy modulars, which are medium term classrooms at Orchard and at Marcotte here to largely address the anticipated population growth amongst the elementary school. A small portion is to address a existing space deficiency. So that will take effect for zoning permits at half the rate for zoning permits submitted after July 1st, and then at full freight next January 1st, to give a little bit of lead time because there's a pretty substantial cost associated with them. And then lastly, just a scheduling update for you all that last month, well, two things, I guess. One, over the next month and a half, as you know, we're going to be doing a lot of public outreach. So Kelsey and I are going to be for several meetings conquering and splitting our services. So you will see one or the other of us, but please note that we work about 7.5 feet from one another. So don't worry, we will share information with one another. And then secondly, last month you had given us guidance to move forward on language in the LDRs related to rooftop or solar ready zone solar. I moved, or we decided to move Kelsey's work in the immediate term to getting going on the comprehensive plan. I'm advancing this piece, and you'll see next month at one of your meetings some language on this.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay,
Much appreciated.
so that's what I got.
Thank you so much. Any other announcements?
Madam Chair, do you need a motion to open the public hearing?
I'm actually not sure because I think it's already open. Do we?
What?
Right?
Probably to, what's the word to
Continue.
continue it?
If you wonder why we haven't been getting any sleep, Michael, it's because we've been in a public meeting.
You don't
Yeah,
need a
I guess
motion.
Could move to
to-
continue the public hearing.
To reopen it.
No,
Okay,
reopen it.
He motioned to continue it. I'll second that.
That's fine.
And any discussion on favor of continuing? Unanimous, very good. And for the record, I saw the hand of Donna also, so it was unanimous. So our public hearing is now reopened or continued. And this is for LDR 22-09 updates to environmental standards. And just so it's on the record, we did receive one emailed comment sent by Sarah Dopp that did get distributed by email to the commissioners ahead of the meeting. And I guess the other thing I was thinking about at the end of our last meeting, there was I think it might have been Duncan, but kind of also seconded by Andrew, like the idea of maybe adjusting the language some so that we still had the 50-foot minimum, but maybe also included the lot line as a kind of maximum one or the other, or the larger of the two. So I don't know. I think we had asked for maybe language that would do that. I don't know, Kelsey, if you had something you wanted to show. I guess I was just thinking, because we had talked about that at the end of our last meeting, maybe we start with that and then we reopen for additional public comment.
Sure.
If there is any more.
So-
May I say that at not the last meeting, but the meeting before, I suggested some language and I did not clearly understand the implications or the unintended consequences of what I'd said. And since I missed the 10th, the meeting on January the 10th, I just needed to say that.
Okay, good. I'm that's good to hear. Thank you. Because I think at our last meeting, we were like, well, Michael said he wanted it this way. So
I did send something to you all, not properly, and I've been duly instructed and trained again by Kelsey about open meeting communications. So I didn't sort of realize that it was in a string. It should have been an
yes.
independent just to you and well, could have gone to the commissioners, but
Sure.
that it's just sent it to you and say, let's talk about it.
Yeah, a very quick reminder for everybody, if there's an email that you send that has the potential to inadvertently open a discussion, even if that discussion is just, looks good, sounds like, I like that, anything, even that minor, would be a possible violation of the open meetings law. So the best practice that we'd recommend is if you have something like proposed language, to send it to some combination of Jessica, Paul, and myself. And we can then put it on an agenda. We can put it up on the screen at a meeting. We can even send it out to all of you with the quick reminder, like, please do not reply all, please do not respond to this.
And we have done that sometimes where someone's had proposed language and they wanted to distribute it.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
we
we're
can
happy to
distribute
distribute it. It's an easier way to keep track of things if it gets filtered through a staff member.
I screwed up and did it for you.
Exactly. Michael is just being efficient. The other quick thing that I wanted to point out about email, which is not totally related, is you all have South Burlington email addresses. Some use it, some more than others. It would be best practice if, when you respond to emails or you send emails that are planning commission related, that you at least CC your own South Burlington address. Because then if there's ever an information request or something else, that we have access to those emails on our end, and the city can do that compliance, and you don't have to go digging through your own personal emails to find, all emails that Michael Mittag has ever sent about the planning commission. So it's just, you don't need to necessarily go into your South Burlington to send your email, but as long as you CC it, it will end up in that record.
Just on that note, Kelsey, I am happy for you to take my personal email address off
Sure.
of communications.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
You send this way, I won't get mixed up this way. the
Absolutely.
Planning commission has the official planning commission email and. Yeah.
Yep, everybody has different preferences.
Yeah.
Some we only send to planning commission email, some we send to both. So I will take yours off.
It's good to know. I know it's actually kind of a hassle having all the emails, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kelsey, we'd ask you for maybe an adjustment.
Yeah, so. Oh, I turned my microphone off. Something that I just wanted to share quickly. Now it is not zoomed properly, but I drew up this quick diagram earlier. This is a hand drawing that I then, scanned in, to talk about the difference between the 50-foot buffer and the lot line possibility, or using a greater of the both of them, to demonstrate that you actually don't get anything additional above using 50 feet by using the lot line. The exception only applies to the small residential lots and not to the neighboring non-residential lots or common area lots or larger lots. So if you look at my diagram, and let me know if you have any questions about it, because I just, hand drew this. The dark blue line would be a hypothetical wetland, like above that line. The black lines would be lot lines, and then the teal and the red are the 50 and 100-foot buffers from that wetland. So currently it's 100 feet. If you took it from 100 back to 50, you would be conserving area A above moving it to lot lines only. So that would be a situation where I drew it like this for anticipating that's the sort of thing you might have happen, is like a little corner or something, maybe 48 feet, like it might not have landed exactly correctly when the lines were drawn. It's that sort of situation that would be very rare, but is possible. Area B, sort of over to the side, that's on the larger lot, would remain protected because it is inside the 100 feet, but it's on that larger lot. Area C wouldn't be protected by either lot line or 50-foot buffer because it's on that it's outside the 100 feet. So there's no logical situation where requiring greater of 50 feet or lot line would actually get you more protection on the residential lots.
To say another way, a couple of drafts ago, it was simply grandfather these lots of 50 feet.
Yep.
And that's the simple rule.
Yep.
That, Totally. agree
Yep,
with that.
and that's actually when we talked, like I embarrassingly, it took me a little bit of time to land on it's this simple, but it really can be this simple. This is what we would recommend, is just reverting back to the 50 feet. I picked up the language again and tweaked it very slightly from what was presented in December originally. And so that's what we would be recommending. The planning commission has the ability to regulate however they want, but it would be a practical solution that is simple, that is easy to understand, that solves most, if not all, of these sorts of problems for homeowners or property owners of existing lots, existing small residential lots as defined. And you still get that additional protection of Section A. So
So I think that was the discussion,
Yeah.
we want to make sure we have the 50 feet.
new language was not circulated in the packet. We kept the same packet from the same information in the packet from the January 10th meeting. But if you'll allow me to
It
sort of,
just goes back to the December language, which was,
yeah, it just goes back to the language. Yeah, for lots less than 0.4.
Can you put it on the screen? so
Yeah, I
we
can try
see it?
to.
Yeah, I just want, just because we had been talking about maybe going back to that language or having a greater, I figured we would do this, and then we'll open back up. Yeah, we'll open back up for additional public comment too before we make any kind of hard
Yeah.
decision on anything.
Picture is worth 100 words in this case.
Did it help, Donna?
Yeah, very much.
There we go. That makes me happy.
Like the picture too.
That's the easiest way for me to share it. Unfortunately, my other document's not opening, but that would be it.
Text a little bigger. so
Yeah.
folks can read it.
So I
Mhm.
think, just as, just so maybe people who might be making comments have a general sense as to what we're thinking about this, just as a general straw poll, would commissioners be interested in kind of reverting back to this language here instead of referring to the lot line, just as a straw poll?
can I make
Or-
a
oh,
comment?
yeah, sure.
So if it's a choice between the very complicated thing that we talked about last time and this,
Mhm.
I prefer this, but actually, I'm gonna make a different suggestion.
Okay. Well, that's the straw poll now, the complicated language or this,
Yes.
we'd be interested in this.
Yes.
Okay, so generally agreement. I was gonna open up to public comment, which I think makes sense, and then we'll have an additional planning commissioner conversation. Okay, does anyone in the public have any additional comments? And go ahead, Sarah, do you want to come up?
Yeah, I did.
Got it.
So I don't really know what to say now because I'm not as bright as you people. I'm sure in time I could understand that drawing, but I haven't fully taken it on board. You've seen, I guess, what I sent and Jessica circulated to you. So you know what I said. And what I was just thinking was that there were two alternatives. I think it's very important to the land trust that we still convey the notion in the LDRs that 100-foot buffer is our standard, if you will, but that there are some exceptions that need to be addressed. And you're obviously going to word this in a way that makes some sense. And if the drawing helps you, great. My suggestion was more that we just give two scenarios about the undeveloped properties and developed properties and essentially grandfather, I hear you're throwing out the grandfather notion, but that was what my notion was, or our notion was. But I do think it's important to kind of hold on to the standard of the 100-foot buffer, because we're making a larger statement even than the state is making right now by saying, this is really important. You know, we've got a lot of pollution in Lake Champlain. We've got a stormwater utility that every other community doesn't have. But let's help our stormwater utility, not make it do all the remediation work, but let Mother Nature, with a little more space, do some of that work before the water ever moves off the property. I guess that's all I can add.
Very good. Well, thank you, Sarah. Does anyone else have any comments? Okay, come on up.
I am Kathy Easton. I live in South Burlington, and I assume this is what we're talking about, all the documents with the red on it,
Yes.
and the statement that was just up there. I guess my first question is, it said lots, did it say lots under a half acre? So what happens if it's an acre lot?
Then the standard would apply, and the standard is a 100-foot buffer.
Okay. This, I mean, I have to say, I think this is a lot to try to digest and understand, but just as a general comment, sometimes you try to the best of your ability to do what is best for the environment. You try to work with the commissions and with the city, and you do everything you can to be a responsible landowner. I mean, in my case, our house has geothermal heating and cooling. We have solar panels that provide 100% of our electricity. I'm wearing a coat that I picked up for $10 at Goodwill. You know, so a lot of us we're frugal by choice, and we're trying to be good stewards of the environment. But sometimes you have an occasion on your property that is in an ecologically, say, diverse area where something comes up and there's a repair needed that may only impact 40 square feet to 100 square feet on a slope where you're trying to repair something. And I think it's important for people who bought parcels of land in good faith, have done everything they can to live within that, are just trying to do something to maintain or improve existing approved features of their property, that somehow the regulations, when they're approving vast housing developments, to my way of thinking, that we need, with lots of disturbance of earth, that there's got to be some way that smaller landowners who are members of the community can make repairs or slight changes to their property that are environmentally responsible and yet are needed to fill a stated need. So I would hope that I truly respect the environment. I respect the work that you're doing, but I also think that there has to be, in all of this, whether people are far to one side or the other, and in our world, it seems like those voices are so loud, that there has to be a place, a middle ground, where everyone can meet and we can do things that can protect the bigger picture and yet also serve the needs of the smaller fry who are out there. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Does anyone joining us online have any comments while we have this open period here? Okay, I'm gonna at least move to planning commissioner comments. Are we comfortable with closing the public hearing at this point? And then we'll have a discussion? So you want to make that motion?
Move to close the public hearing on LDR 22-09.
A second.
Okay, any discussion about that?
I had a question, and I wasn't at the last meeting, so I had to watch the video.
Need to close the hearing.
Can we close the hearing
I
first?
thought we did.
We
that.
didn't vote.
Oh,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Donna, unanimous.
Is it for closing?
Closing the
public-
hearing.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Okay, hearing has been closed. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
so I watched the video, and there was some discussion on about what kind of encroachments we might consider in that part of the buffer that is under discussion here, and we're limiting it to certain types of things like above ground decks and sheds and that sort of thing. So was that just a sort of theoretical discussion, or is it something that you wanted that the commissioners wanted to actually incorporate?
I think it was theoretical, but we didn't have any kind of change.
I have no
Yeah, I think
particular.
the one thing we had kind of asked staff about was that lot line versus 50 feet piece.
So, I would actually like to suggest a change because it was my comment at the last meeting that was my preference, and given the comments of the land trust, I would like us to formally consider it, but maybe before doing that, I just have a question for Paul and Kelsey. So people have come in and asked for a change to the rule. Has it been in the nature of decks and sheds, or for developed lots? And what, if anything else, have people asked about?
In the ones we got last summer, I recall a few decks,
Deck extensions, yeah.
deck extensions, a pool was
I
one,
think a shed or large,
Shed.
fairly large shed.
and then some that sort of, it's combinations of things, like somebody wanted to be putting a patio which doesn't need a permit from us, and then they could connect it to the extension to the deck that is partly in and partly out, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Those are what we have received
Okay.
thus far.
But I think the one other thing that we had looked at on the mapping that's not included with what you just said, so maybe no one came in and directly asked about it, but it seemed like there were a handful of pre-existing lots that were, approved for a home, but then the home didn't get built yet. So there were a
Right.
few of those, I
Yes, I'm
think,
focused on
too.
developed lots. For undeveloped lots, I think it's a different question, but so for the developed lots, I guess my own perspective would be that I have a lot of sympathy for, less impactful things like above ground decks, sheds, fences. I personally would not want to see impervious surfaces and concrete poured on this buffer. Otherwise, why do we write the rule? So, for undeveloped lots, I'm completely sympathetic that we should allow a house that could have been built, assuming the 50-foot buffer were the rule, because that's, otherwise that person would be deprived of being able to do anything on their lot. So I think that's a very sympathetic case. So that's and I think Michael Hills helpfully drafted something that goes toward that. So that I don't know if, well, maybe we should discuss that, but
Yeah, that does distinguish between developed lots and undeveloped lots. As Andrew's just mentioned, for somebody who's not yet built. And they should be able to build to the 50-foot buffer. But from the comments that were made at your last meeting, fences, above ground decks, sheds, and so on could be permissible encroachments, but a swimming pool, that's it's a big has a big impact on the buffer, or any impervious surface would have a big impact on the buffer if it's
So just a very quick ecological clarification, something like a solid roof is an impervious
Yes.
surface for that footprint. So a solid roof above, on a shed above the ground and a solid piece of concrete sitting on the ground has a very similar
Okay.
sort of perviousness from
the
that
shed-
sort of wetlands runoff perspective.
Yeah, if the shed is permanent and on a permanent slab of concrete, yes, I would have a hard time with that as well, within a buffer. The kinds of sheds that I see around are, well, they're portable in a way, and decks don't have to be impervious. Rainwater can go through decks between the slats if they're designed correctly. So it's the impervious structures that I'm struggling with in a wetland buffer.
Oh, Donna, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just thought it would be a good thing to address, was it Deborah, the woman who spoke up about things like geothermal systems? Say somebody wanted to put solar panels in their backyard, it happened to, fall into that area. I mean, we're talking about fences and things like that. What if it's subsurface, as geothermal would be? Would that be, do you have to stop? Well, would you stop at the 50-foot line from the wetlands for something like that? Or would that be 100 feet for an existing property? I mean, it's another one of those things that we often don't think about in zoning, but I think we need to start thinking about them. You don't want to prevent someone from putting in geothermal if they have a small yard and can't use perhaps the more than about half of their remaining yard. It just, the solar is kind of different because there's so many other things attached to that and neighbors' complaints and stuff like that. But so that one's probably a lot more complicated, but subsurface, anything subsurface, I'm just kind of curious, does that fall under this as well?
I would say geo exchange, since it's underground. I mean, the ground loop, at least, you would still have the ground would still be able to infiltrate water.
Right, it doesn't once, I mean, building it will have an effect, but once it's completed, it wouldn't have any effect whatsoever. The wetland potentially makes it work better, actually.
I think Donna, you're kind of getting at like one of the things that's running through my head. Like there's all these different things that people might come in for, and it's not always a fence or a deck. Like there's other things people might be doing. And, I think to Kathy's point, somebody's trying to do a little thing on their property and, we might not have thought it through. And I guess part of my thinking a little bit is, I think the big thing is making sure we're maintaining the 100 feet everywhere we can. And do we really want to create a fight with these little existing landowners about what they're doing in their backyard and make it so complicated that, now we've created a whole lot of, mad homeowners who are just trying to maintain their lawn out back and maybe make it a little nicer for them. I don't know. I guess I just want to make sure we're not doing something that's gonna kind of turn people against the bigger movement towards conserving. I could definitely see someone come in and being told they can't put a deck or a shed that has a foundation because it's too close to the back of their property, and just becoming so mad about what we're doing, and then they're going to vote against the penny for parks or something because they're we've gone too far. Like, so I don't know. I guess I'm just not sure. It feels like it's very complicated to like parse out all these different things. And if we're generally comfortable with 50 feet, which is how these lots were developed, you know, maybe that's the way to go. So there's not all these questions about what's in and what's out and what you can do in the backyard. And
Maybe we can flip it around. I hear you, Jessica, and I think you're making some very good points, but maybe we can write something like between the 5,100 feet, you can do, you know, anything you would do, except not an upgrade that incorporates, you know, significant new impervious surface. So kind of flip it around. Yeah, right. So you can do the little things, you can do the geothermal, you can put the solar on the pole, you don't have to, but if it's significant new impervious surface in that area, you can't do that. And what exactly does that mean? We can leave it up to DRB, or maybe we can flesh it out a little bit as maybe percentage of a lot or something, but something that doesn't allow someone to just pave over that buffer, I guess is what was bothering me.
It's impervious surfaces that are bothering me too. So, yeah, being less prescriptive, I think Andrew's got a good point, less prescriptive, but clear that we are trying to preserve the reason for having a buffer.
yeah, no, and I guess I could be on board with that, like the idea that not having a giant basketball court or
Putting a roller
giant
skating
thing,
rink.
yeah,
you know,
some
but
kind
you can
of
talk
very,
about
very
that,
large thing.
You know, right?
Just
You know, just paving over the whole thing, right? Yeah.
Question for start, I mean, would it be feasible to use Andrew's point of setting a maximum area as a percentage of the area that's being encroached upon?
Well, I guess my question to you all would be, maybe that's already being accomplished. So our regulations in various zoning districts, including the SEQ, put a maximum amount of lot coverage. So you can't have, what's the number? Is it 30%?
I feel like it's 30.
So no more than 30% of your lot can be anything that is impervious. So that includes the building, your
Driveway.
walkways, driveways, basketball court, decks actually count as impervious as far as we're concerned.
Yep.
And so
Swimming pools would be impervious.
swimming pools, I think, fall in that category. So all of those things, we already limit to say, I think it's 30% in that in the southeast quadrant, which is where most of this happens.
Some districts it is 30%, and I feel like that's correct for that specific district.
And so there isn't a circumstance where somebody can just pave the whole thing. If you're doing a principal structure, so you know, something that's connected to your house, that has to be at least 30 feet from the back of your property. And so if you're saying the 50 feet, you've added 30 feet. And so what you're getting realistically is, you know, let's say most of these wetlands are already at the 50-foot line. A major improvement that has a foundation is most likely to be 80 feet away. And then you still could get decks and sheds and things like that. So I think that what you're asking for is largely covered, but it is your
Yeah, it's
policy.
not necessarily all in the same regulation, but when you layer all the other things on top of each other, that's
So
limitations
the
on the
folks
lot.
that came in for the pool, I guess they had a big enough lot that they were able to put the pool and still meet the 30%.
Right.
or a small enough house, kind
Small
of a
house or a
thing.
small enough pool or whatever.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Okay.
or less driveway, or like driveways are a lot larger than people think they are often. The square footage of your driveway can be as much as your house pretty easily.
All right, well, that makes me feel better, especially with that setback thing about the buildings. Any other, thoughts? I think this is a really good discussion. I'm wondering if we're, based on some of those other things that are already in the regulations, if we're landing back at the 50 feet, kind of simple
I mean,
for these limited circumstances.
the 30% limitation is very helpful and probably solves my concerns. So yeah, then I would be happy to scrub this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to just clarify again that this is, again, it's only applicable to this very narrow set of lots that are a certain size that have been previously approved for one single or two family homes before November of 2021. So this wouldn't be anything new going forward.
So any discussion on any of the other points that are in the draft? Okay, so I guess in order to, I guess this means, and this is actually not the agenda for this meeting. Whatever is the next agenda item where we do the thing where we talk about
Do
it.
we need to vote on that new language? that-
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is that technically in the next agenda item? I just want to make sure we are
Yeah,
on track.
technically it's a number.
Yeah, so we're already in number 6, the discussion and possible vote. So yes, Michael, I think maybe we need that language that Kelsey had shown, just to make sure we know what the new language is before we can do any kind of
Would it,
vote.
would it be helpful for me to put it back up?
Yes, please.
And then on a separate subject, just a reminder from your last meeting, you'd had a discussion about steep slopes. And when there happens to be a small section of a steep slope somewhere in the middle of a property, and whether you want to exempt what the DRB would interpret to be a de minimis piece or not, and you decided you wanted to sleep on it and make a call. We're comfortable either way. De minimis by definition means minor and largely insignificant, right, Kelsey? That's the legal,
If, yeah, translating to
Uh,
sort of non-legal terms, it's as small as makes no difference.
right? But as I said at the last meeting, staff was sort of split, and so we said, let's just bring it to you. I did ask Duncan. Duncan said he was largely didn't have an opinion on it. If he was forced to be a deciding vote, he would probably remove the de minimis exemption. Just because he's not familiar with the term so much, but he was very much did not have a strong opinion on it.
And I guess I didn't hear from Ted on that, but Ted did say it was okay with the 50 feet thing, what we just talked about. So
My Zoom
Kelsey, are
is-
we,
My Zoom has decided right now is the moment to update itself.
Oh.
So I will
Oh,
put it
no.
there.
oh, Zoom.
Oh, Zoom.
Maybe we could just say as amended this evening.
I will
Can we
get,
do that?
I have,
Because we saw the language.
Yeah, and we'll just, Sue, we'll send it over to you so you can include it in the minutes, okay?
Okay, does somebody want to make a
but
motion?
I did it.
Thank you.
There it is.
Move to approve amendments to the land development regulations LDR 22-09 with the proposed changes presented at this meeting relating to the buffer on lots of less than half an acre in existence prior to November the 10th, 2021. And
Okay, we got a second.
wait, and to approve the planning commission report and to submit both to the city council.
Okay, we got Andrew as a second for the whole deal there. Any additional discussion on the item? And just to be clear, we are seeing the new language up on the screen that's part of the vote.
Not part of the vote, but I have, I'm sorry that I took us on this detour.
Oh, no. What's the detour?
No,
No,
he-
the previous detail.
Oh, the previous detour. Oh, okay. This wasn't as bad as some of them though, Michael. This wasn't so bad at all. Okay. Ready for a vote? Okay, so unfortunately I can't see Donna, so maybe you can yell out. So all in favor? All right. Woohoo! Okay, that
Loud
was,
enough?
we heard you and I can see you now too. So unanimously passed. Very good. Thank you all and for the great public comment also. So we can move on to number 7. So we have a presentation on the TIF district by Alana Blanchard, who is our Community Development Director.
Thank you.
And you can sit wherever you'd like.
So for the record, my name's Alana Blanchard, as I was just introduced. And thank you, Chair. Let me into the right window. Sure, and I can also project a little bit more for all of you. So really excited to be here. I think you guys were here at the very beginning of this. Well, not the very beginning, because it's been going on hopefully a lot longer than you've all been involved since the 70s. But we are at a sort of milestone in the TIF district, which is that we're coming up on the end of the time during which we can incur debt. And I have a presentation that I've been giving to all the committees, but I'm going to spend a little extra time to give you an update on the TIF district projects tonight. We have a bond vote, and I apologize, there is a typo on the first page. Can you allow me to screen share? Thank you. Let's try it. So we're coming up on an important moment in the TIF district, which will, sorry, almost there.
I can't do it, so today is not our day.
I'll get a phone.
No, it's okay. I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so let's see. Now it's me. Oh my goodness. Yes, I think you actually started me off sharing. Am I sharing currently? Okay, I am not sharing. No, I figured out. I accidentally. Never mind. I'm not going to tell you. Here we go. Okay, so tonight, we're going to talk about Article 4. We're going to talk about the TIF district. I'm not going to spend as much time on 101 because I feel like the Planning Commission is very well versed in the TIF district. Spend a lot of time on the projects and talk a bit about where TIF revenue comes from and the ballot question and where you can find more information. So our city center TIF district is shown here on the screen in blue, and is sort of bounded on the west by Dorset Street, the east by Heinsberg Road, and the north side by Williston Road, includes all of San Remo Drive. So it bumps pretty much up against the middle school property boundary. And so a TIF district is this amazing economic development tool that is a state tool, and it includes essentially all of the property inside that the blue boundary, and represented here in green, as it was in 2012. All those properties each year going forward, all the taxes, same tax rate as everyone else has applied against those properties. That revenue goes to the city and goes to the state just as it normally would. But the growth in the TIF district, that's Allard Square that's next to us, Trader Joe's, the new building that is going to be opening this spring at Market and Garden Street, and the project that just broke ground, Prospect Place, right next to Healthy Living. All of those projects are growth. And so taxes against that value, 75% of those taxes goes into a special fund, and every year until 2037. And we hold it in that special fund just to pay for financing on our public projects in the TIF district. So that is huge. Very few communities have this.
And just
Yeah.
to I'm sorry, if it weren't TIF would the 75% be a different number?
Nope, the 75%. So what is special about it is that we have to put it into a special fund.
I understand. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if we didn't TIF it, would we get to keep more or less than
Less.
75%?
We would keep a lot less. So we would keep about a third of it
And the remainder would go,
to the ed fund. And it doesn't go, it doesn't impact the school, so it doesn't diminish the amount that the school receives. It's essentially the taxes that would be on the ed fund, and the ed fund as a whole
so
addresses it.
doing this is both
Yeah.
timing, but critically, we actually, the total amount of tax revenue that we get to spend as a city is the difference between the 1/3 that we would normally get from the new growth and the 75%.
So the 75% is the 75% of the municipal taxes. I'm gonna back up. So that blue, that's the new growth. That is because of the improvements. The 75% that we're keeping is 75% of the municipal tax rate. So if the municipal tax rate is 0.52, for example, against the value. And so what we keep is that 0.52. We're only keeping 75% of that in the fund.
But again, I just want to be very simple.
Yeah.
If it weren't TIF.
Yeah.
We'd be keeping less than 75%, or we'd be keeping only a third, is that?
Right, so municipal side ed fund. When you say we, let me parse it out.
The city
No,
keeps.
hang on. On the
That's what I'm
municipal
saying.
side
Yeah.
of the growth, if there weren't a TIF district, we'd get 100, the city gets 100% of that growth on the city side. When there's a TIF district, the city general fund gets 25%. And the city TIF fund gets the 75% of that growth. So the city still gets the same amount of the growth. It
Whether
just,
or not we TIF it, we get the same tax revenue over time.
No,
It's just,
because we also
Because
get
the
the
Board of
ed
Ed.
fund.
right, on the city side, we get the same amount. 75% of it goes into the TIF fund for a certain period of
Are
time.
you talking about the general fund?
Just the city as an entity in
City
total.
as an
wanna look at the
entity,
total tax dollars, right?
in total tax dollars, we're also receiving 75% of the state ed fund, which we think of as the school tax. So if you look at your property tax bill, there's two rates,
Yeah, yeah.
municipal and school rate, or state education fund rate. We're also keeping 75% of the state education fund.
Okay, so if there
Taxes.
hadn't been this TIF project,
We would not keep
that
that.
75% of those taxes on the education fund portion will go to the state rather than to the city.
Correct.
So this is not just timing, we actually get more dollars to spend equal to 75% of what otherwise would have gone to the education fund.
Right, which is a huge proportion
huge.
of the total
Yeah,
bill. It's 2/3
two-thirds
of
of the
right.
total.
Yeah.
That's
So
the huge
75%
power of the TIF.
Of 2/3, it's about half.
No,
About half of that new
2/3.
growth and revenue that would otherwise go to the state comes to the city. It's about, right, 2/3 of 75.
Yes, it's a huge statewide investment policy to assist municipalities.
So that's
Yes.
really helpful. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a huge point. So, and then 25% goes where it normally would. So we're talking about this right now because we're at the end of the term during which the city can incur debt. We have until March 31st, 2024, and the upcoming town meeting day is our last regularly scheduled voting opportunity. So there's 30 days during which a vote can be challenged. And so the town meeting day, March 2024, doesn't give us enough time to actually go and sign all the paperwork to issue debt. So we have 4 projects left in the TIF district, and they are the East-West Crossing, Walk Bike Bridge over ID9. And these are the 4 projects that are left to have TIF district financing authorized by the voters. The Williston Road Streetscape, which is a shared use path on the south side of Williston Road between Dorset Street and Midas Drive. And Garden Street, which is pretty complex. I've got a lot of diagrams on that. We're going to go through that in big detail. Between Al's and Gracie's includes reconstruction of the intersection at Al's. And then the City Center Park project, phase 2, which is building a shared use path that connects the City Center Park to Garden Street and Market Street. And that includes a boardwalk over the wetlands.
What's the number on the top right? I can't see because.
Sure. Top right is 8.3 million. I'm not sure if what you're seeing, but
Just.
yeah.
Donna's picture is.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, there it is.
Unfortunately, yeah. So for each of these projects, and I'll just back up. So these pies are supposed to represent the relative costs. The orange is our federal dollars, the blue are TIF dollars, the gray are other, generally reserve funds or other sources such as grants. Grants that are not secured yet. So this is the budget for each of the TIF district projects that are remaining and that are included in the bond ask. It will be one question on the ballot for $15,086,430. And this is the approved amount in the TIF district financing plan. So what the state has approved us to finance for these projects. So this sort of shows you how much of each budget may be financed with TIF district dollars.
So I'm sorry, just so like the one that says 50%, that means the city's paying for half of that out of our general revenue and half out of the TIF financing?
Yes, only we do have 800,000 in federal funds for the Williston Road Streetscape. So there's still a gap between that 800,000 and the 1,300,000 basically for the streetscape. And we will be looking, because it's on Williston Road, that's federally eligible for federal dollars. So that's something that we will be looking to fill with federal dollars, but we have been collecting funds that is built into the existing tax rate to fund the CIP reserve fund. So that, for example, is what has paid for the city share of this building that we're sitting in today. And so that is built into that rate for the Williston Road Streetscape as well.
So Andrew, to answer your question in the inverse, the percentage there represents the maximum that TIF can be used for. All other funds, including local, but grants or impact fees or whatever, is the balance of that.
Useful to see that, but okay.
Yeah. And that's an important point because this vote is on TIF financing only. So this only includes dollars that would be financed with the TIF district.
Oh, because it doesn't commit the city to spend the other dollars?
It doesn't include any dollars that are not TIF district financed. So if for those gray areas, we need to issue debt for those, we would have to come back to the voters for that.
So on your pie chart, like at the top one, the blue would be the TIF vote. The orange is what you already have in federal, and the
Right.
gray is what is something else, like maybe
Something
more
else.
federal or more or whatever, some
Yeah.
other thing.
And we do have it built into the tax rate with what is being put into the CIP reserve fund currently. But it is a federally eligible roadway, and we would certainly be seeking funds for federally eligible projects.
So I'm sorry, just one more
Yeah.
question. So we talked earlier that the benefit to the city is basically half of the growth in taxes or otherwise go to the education fund. Has anyone estimated what the present value of that would be and how that compares to the amounts in blue? Like, is it almost free to the city, or does the city still have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did,
Yeah.
do we know how those two things relate to each other?
So when what we build models for, because we're financing, we're looking at what we're spending in financing costs for the projects and then what we think our revenues would be. So generally, we're looking at what our long-term revenues are over time. and we're using the state model. So the state model doesn't do net present value. It looks at what we would be paying annually in debt and what we would be receiving annually in taxes.
I guess I'm
Until
just,
te-
I guess I'm
until
just
nine-
asking, do
until
we have a
37.
sense of what that number would be? 50% of the education taxes on the growth?
I think that Alana's gonna have a slide in a few minutes that
Okay.
may answer that question
Okay.
about what our known and our projected revenues are, and then you could pretty easily run that math from
Okay.
there. So I think it's a little later on that you get your same presentation you get.
I'm a little lighter on the model and heavier on the projects, but we can, that is actually, I have a giant spreadsheet that I,
Just want one
happy-
number.
okay.
Saying yes.
I'm saying yes, but you might have to wait till February 1st, though. Okay, so first project that I want to talk about, and I'm going to spend the most time on this project, is Garden Street. The earliest that we could go into construction on this project is 2024. And we're at the 60% design level, which means that we're ready for right-of-way acquisition. And this is also a big federal aid opportunity. And so this is, where the area of the project is today. And I'm just going to back up because I want to give you an overview of the overall Garden Street project and then where this is in context. So I think you can all see my cursor. Is that right? Okay, good. So Garden Street Phase 1 was voted on in 2021. And it includes improvements to Garden Street between Trader Joe's and Healthy Living. It does not include this area here, which is owned by South Burlington City Center LLC, and they have been building Garden Street between this, and they will continue to build it as part of their development project. We own this parcel here, and then part of this driveway that is part of it appears to be part of the Midas lot, but it's actually owned by the city. And so that will be the future Garden Street connection to Midas Drive. I have a letter that was drafted very close to the pandemic and that will be going to you at some point in the future, requesting that Midas Drive be renamed to Garden Street. And so that will create one continuous street that connects to Williston Road and will become clearer. So if people are looking for Garden Street from either Williston Road or Dorset Street, they can easily find it.
Will that also include the straightening out of the connection to White?
Yes, and so Phase 2 represented here in orange. Phase 1 does include the reconstruction of Midas Drive. And Phase 2, which is included in this Article 4 vote, also begins on Midas Street and is somewhat vague in order to allow for any changes in the budget. So if we spend less or more on one, we can use up any differences between the two projects. It includes the and I'm going to go back to my other one because it's much better. So this is the extent today. We're looking at Al's French Fries right here. This is La Quinta. Out Gracie's is over here. So it essentially realigns this intersection. And I'll just go back and forth. So here's Midas, White Street, and then Midas and White Street. So we are going from a condition that only has a sidewalk and crosswalks on the north and south side to a fully realigned intersection so that vehicles can go back and forth. And there's clear turning lanes on all four sides. But also there will be a bicycle facility on the south side. So a continuation of the Williston Road streetscape on the south side that crosses over at Midas and then continues over to Heinsberg Road and then on to Williston Road where we have on-street bike lanes, as well as a separated sidewalk adjacent to on Midas Drive. And then here it's both we have both conditions. So where there's not enough room, there's just a shared use path. So this adds a lot of transportation capacity to this to the overall city center to facilitate future development. Both inside city center and on Williston Road.
If I can just make two little additional plugs. The intersection of White Street and Midas Drive, can you go back to the other one? If you haven't, if you haven't been out there on foot, there is no way to cross Williston Road there. People do it, and it is a not very comfortable circumstance. So if you now go to the advanced one of the big things is it creates crosswalks to connect the core of city center with the entire Chamberlain neighborhood and the north side of Williston Road. And it creates an opportunity for a really neat little park right there, which is not something that we have had a lot of in South Burlington. So a little gateway park at sort of the entry point to our commercial area. That one's sort of a side effect of a leftover, but those are often how you get really neat little placemaking in communities.
I keep hearing from the Public Art Committee that there will be some art there in the future, so we'll see. So the east-west crossing walk bike bridge over, I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions on Garden Street? It's okay. So the east-west cross.
Oh, Don has a question. Go ahead, Don. You're muted though right now.
Don, you're on mute.
Hey, Donna, you're on mute.
I just figured that out. At what point is the connection? Will Garden Street be fully connected then?
So I would say not before 2026, only because there's at the earliest, because we think there would be multiple, and I would say that's for the public section, because there would be multiple construction seasons probably for this project. More than one.
Okay, but you're not showing the connection of what has been Midas Drive to the rest of Garden Street. Is that contingent upon another construction project there and it's all private construction, or?
No, so that's actually phase one and that's already been voted on. So these slides were developed for the current bond vote that is before the public or will become before the public when the ballots are issued. But that part has already been voted on and approved by the voters.
Oh,
Could you
So-
just show us where that would be?
Yeah,
Donna?
actually, this is a much better one. So the roadway will actually be, and so this is the shared use path, and it's just going to continue around on the roadway and then through this right of way that we already own right here. So we own, I don't know if I can get yeah, there we go. So basically, right, like that. So you can see the roadway is right here and it just sort of comes around like that.
And just to reiterate what you said, that part that you just highlighted in red has already been approved by the voters for funding.
Correct.
Okay.
great, thanks.
Yeah. Great question. Okay, so the east-west crossing walk bike bridge over I-89, and I will point out that what is shown on the left is an illustration. So there are many aspects of this that will be carried forward in the design, but probably the U-Mall connection will not be at that particular point. It's quite expensive to build the wall to 30 feet in elevation. So we'll probably take advantage of some of the grading. So we'll still have a University Mall connection, but it would not be at that particular location. It might be further up, further to the north. So the walk bike bridge over I-89 obviously has a huge amount of federal funding, and the TIF district funding portion of this is allowed to be 30% of the cost. And this project is not only a federally funded, but also is under very stringent federal I don't know if there are rules, restrictions. We have to begin building in 2025. So we actually have to finish up our design. I know the engineer in the room just raised their eyebrows. So, so we barely have a concept approved, and we will be submitting it to the federal government for approval for construction basically next summer. So that is a very fast timeline for this project. The Williston Road streetscape, I don't have great pictures for it. It's a very straightforward project from a design perspective. It's really a shared use path with a wide 7-foot buffer between the shared use path and the curb. Doesn't affect the right of way and doesn't affect the paving. So curb to curb on Williston Road will stay the same as it is today. It does affect the right of way. We will be acquiring right of way in order to create more comfortable pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, and also to create snow storage on the side of the road so that when the road is plowed, the snow has a place to be and not on the sidewalk. So a really important project, but much graphically a little more straightforward. And then the City Center Park Phase 2 is a shared use path that will be paved with lighting between Barrett Street, Garden Street, and Market Street, excuse me, Garden, Market, and Barrett. It will have we'll use existing pathways that exist in the park and the existing paved access road that is on the stormwater pond on Market Street.
Did you say
Is it
it's a
paved or
paved
raised?
path, or because you referred to it as a boardwalk in previous
And
presentations?
it will also be a boardwalk. So there's the wetland is right here. So sort of like right like that. And so there will be 2 portions. It'll be more of an arc. So in plan view, I think they sort of drew over the trees a little bit here, but in plan view, it will feel like an arc. So as you're on it, it'll be sort of a gentle curve across the wetland, but it'll be 2 pieces on the wetland. And this part here is actually fairly open in this area. Can you see my little cursor moving?
And
around?
Alana, correct me if I'm wrong, but the wetland crossings, at least at the sort of impact level, have been approved by the Army Corps of Engineers, the state, and the local level. So
So
that's
they-
all been,
So the wetland crossings are, so this land. Yeah, oops, sorry, that's not a good line. That the second line represents the park land that we own. And then we have received a rec path easement from this property owner, South Burlington City Center LLC. And when their development partner, Snyder Braverman, developed the property, went through their Army Corps and A&R permitting process, they included this path, and that's the alignment that we're following. We will still need to do some permitting as part of the project, but conceptually, it has been sort of blessed, and they're expecting those impacts on to the wetland. That makes sense.
So just, so this is boardwalk is over the wetland, otherwise it's paved?
It's actually will be all paved, including the boardwalk. So or ideally it will be, because we want to make sure that we can plow it in the winter.
So over the wetland, it's not raised,
It'll be raised.
So
Yes.
it's a boardwalk, but it
It's a
has
boardwalk.
a solid
it's a concrete
surface.
surface, but
Yeah.
it's a raised. so
Raised
it's a
boardwalk.
Raised surface over the wetlands.
Yes,
And it's on ground, on grade, where it's not wetlands?
where it's not in the buffers.
Alana, would the example of where the bike path in Burlington and Colchester crosses the Winooski River and then goes into Colchester be sort of an example of something that's raised but has a solid surface, as sort of like a, not exactly, but sort of an example of what you're
Yes.
describing?
Yeah.
Okay. that-
Yeah. There's I think the picture that is up here. So I think of it as a rec path that also meets boardwalks. So where it's a sensitive wetland, we have a boardwalk, and where it's part of the park or part of the overall development parcel, it's a path. If that makes sense. And there's I think the product that we're all interested in, I don't know if that's where it will end up with, is actually shown in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. I don't know if that's where Donna is, but
I mean, it sounds great. It sounds expensive to maintain that, but why not just make like a wooden slat boardwalk? It just seems odd to have a raised concrete path that just, I can see that becoming something that is a bear to maintain.
yeah, and well, and part of the reason is there's a lot of engineering that goes into the boardwalk period just to put it in, and so and we do want to have it plowed in the winter, and so because of that wear and tear, the concern is that if it's wood, there'll be a lot of wear and tear, but also there's more of an opportunity for more slippery conditions, especially as the trees and the wetland. So this used to be pretty cleared before. So we do expect the trees to get much larger at this location. And so as it's shady and damp, we're interested in something that had a lot more slip resistance in the future. So.
Yeah. Just a comment about longevity, because Lou's Crossing was done, what, 10 or 12 years ago? And, you know, the boards on that are definitely showing their wear at this point. And, you know, that has been kept plowed. And, you know, it can accommodate vehicles to plow, but it does take a beating, the wood surfaces. And if you go to Colchester, that's held up extremely well for what now, 20 years? That, you know, that raised area has held up well. So just from a maintenance standpoint, I think Lana's right. I mean, the concrete, it may not seem as natural, but it sure is a lot less maintenance.
Good question. There was definitely a lot of debate about it. So,
Oh, and I've known two people who have broken collarbones slipping on the wooden bridge in Burlington, just north of Oakledge Park. And that's very shady. It's very shady, and there's a turn coming onto it. And two different people that I know personally broke collarbones falling on that.
yeah, I think. Yeah, that's a great example, Donna. That was definitely one of the sites that we discussed a lot with the engineers.
Yeah.
So we have a revenue model. I actually don't have that many slides related to it, but partially because it's a preliminary model, and we'll be putting out the model that will go out in the public information notice at the beginning of February.
I'm sorry, Lon, but
Yeah.
so you did the model. Is there a number on that page that we can't see that represents the total anticipated incremental tax revenue, i.e. the 75% of the 66% of the amount that others go to ed fund? What's that number? Do we know it?
I don't have it separated out in municipal and education in here, although that I can certainly provide that.
I love that number.
Yeah.
Because I mean that, like, it's just interesting to me, like, if we're gonna be spending 14, 15 million, but we're getting,
Yes.
14, 15 million that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten, well, that's great. If we only say anticipating another 3 million, well, then we're taking 11 million from some other place. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just interesting to me what that number is.
No, we are on the hook if we don't hit the number.
No, I understand that, but if.
No,
I think it's,
I know exactly what number
Yeah.
you're looking for.
yeah,
Yeah, and I can certainly provide that.
thank you.
So what's good to know is that a yes vote will not increase the property tax rate. Because this is a TIF district financed bond vote.
Except if that number's not, in other words,
Yes,
if we're spending, say, 15 million and we only anticipate another 5 million, say, of this incremental revenue, then over time, our property taxes are going to increase 10 million bucks. So that's why it's really important to know that number, because it's not, it's a little misleading otherwise.
yes. So I wanted to talk to you about our pipeline development, because that's an important part of the model that I'll be sending you. And I'm sorry.
I guess just is it kind of close? Like you probably know, like,
Yeah,
Like-
I'm gonna show, I will show you that much. I'll show you where we are.
I just. it's a-
Yeah,
it's a
no,
critical thing, like,
It is. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No. So I do have that number. And if we wanted, I could pull up the model and just show it to you.
She's given
That's
us those numbers in the past, so she's not
No,
hiding anything.
No, I did give the numbers to, I didn't give them broken out the way you talked about, but your question, I did provide it all to the council. So I just cut out a lot of the slides for the committee. So I want to talk to you about pipeline development because that's where our revenue comes from. So I want to show you where we are in terms of our pipeline. We build the revenue model off the whole TIF district. If I back up, so looking at everything inside here that's developable, but not the school district. And then in terms of our pipeline and existing, so what the model shows is both everything that could be developed. That's so likely parcels like this, and then parcels where perhaps it's currently in an industrial use and the owners may have like half moved to somewhere else, but they haven't completed the movement to another site, or maybe they've talked about it in the past. Or maybe they've offered a certain proportion of their property up for sale in the past. So it doesn't include everything, but it does include some key parcels. So the pipeline development that has been very recently announced and that we were really excited to add into the model and sort of revise everything relates to South Burlington City Center LLC's proposed development. And this is sort of a close-up map of it. So it's only the central part of the TIF district. It includes stuff that's already been developed, like Allard Square, CHT, Champlain Housing Trust, Garden Apartments. So in purple, that's everything that's either broken ground, been completely approved for development. In red is Catamount Run. So that is what the University of Vermont has partnered with Snyder Braverman to build. And then what's shown in pink is sort of in the development pipeline, in that it's been shown on as part of development permits for other projects, and it's sort of like we have a high degree of confidence that would be developed in the future. Yeah.
Can we just pause here so that I can give
Yes.
even more up to date on this information? So the purple is all existing or under construction, and with the exception of the City Hall building, is all contributing the incremental value to the TIF and will be for the remainder of the TIF. On the right side of Market Street, so the north side, the two red buildings and the pink building are currently in our office under review for design, and we are anticipating that within the next few weeks they will get their approval. And their stated intent, the applicant, is to pull their permits to start construction on all three of those buildings this spring. They may phase it within, start the foundation of one, then the next and the next, but everything on the right side of Market Street North, they would anticipate being under construction this spring. On the left side, the two red buildings and the pink building next to it, or something that looks similar to that, we're anticipating receiving the development application in the next 2 to 3 months on that. It's the same folks, so they're getting themselves organized with all their permits on one side of the street and then doing the other side.
When you say left and right, you mean north and south?
I mean north and south, but I'm like, it's oriented. Yeah. The part that says run first, the part that says Catamount next. And then the remaining pink building that's kind of between the two purple ones is a future one. That one is not currently the part of the partnerships and the financing, but they will have built all the infrastructure around it, so it will be a beneficial project for them to do at that.
So do in their applications, do they say what's going to happen with the first floor?
Yes.
In other words.
Yep. So the first floor, so I'm going to speak about the north side of the street because that's the application we have in. In the two red buildings, the first story for almost all of it, except the very northern tips, must be non-residential. They are the numbers of commercial slash sort of amenity that can be commercial is going to be about 11,000 square feet in each of those two buildings, so about 22,000. They anticipate, though we haven't received the application yet, more or less mirroring that on the other side. So about 40,000 square
That's a
feet.
fair
of-
amount. And like, is the idea that'll be restaurants and shops and bicycle shop, and like things that will
Sidewalk
get
cafe.
people out mingling and.
Yep, the form-based code is intentionally a little bit flexible in that so that it could be an office space or something like that. But the idea is that the form-based code is written so that the spacing of the doors and the structure of it has to enable all those uses, like restaurants and cafes and bike shops. And Paul will remember this from his time on and Michael from the form-based code, that understanding that bringing 40,000 square feet of small scale on at once can be challenging. They wanted to be a little bit more flexible in the uses, understanding that this is not a, 2 to 5 year downtown. It's a 2 to 5 to 20 to 50 to 100 to we're making this forever. So-
It's form, not function. And, it could be a gym on the street. level.
Yep.
Can you,
I'm sorry, just one more question. Could you just quickly with your mouse, Alana, where's the boardwalk that we were talking about before? Is it?
yeah, it's right here.
Oh, so it doesn't run
And then
through
you
any of
can
this?
see it's
Oh.
actually right here
I see.
and it'll
Okay,
come up on the far side
okay.
of the pond,
Okay,
of the
thanks.
stormwater pond.
Yeah, and then the big L-shaped building that you were just there, the north eastern edge of that will be a childcare facility. So that's under construction now. And then the very bottom corner of it will be where the childcare has
Oh, right here.
their outdoor space that will be sort of up against the boardwalk so that the kids can then learn about nature and make use of the park immediately adjacent, which is pretty neat.
A lot of the Eastern Mountain Sports Building doesn't show, but it's part of the TIF, right?
It's part of the TIF and it's right here. Yes. Yeah.
As are the four buildings on the right-hand side that are David Shanks.
Right here.
Yeah, those are also contributing, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Was there another business in Prospect Place?
Yep, there's going to be a coffee shop in there too. Yeah. Or
Okay.
something like a coffee shop.
Okay, great. More questions on this slide? Okay. So combined, the two buildings that are under construction, so one opening this spring and one opening, I believe, in 2 years, which are invested in by UVM Medical Center, and then the Catamount Run invested in by UVM, will mean that there will be 476 new homes opened by 2026. So that's a huge increase in square footage and assessed value in the TIF district.
But it's not open to the general public.
No, but they will be contributing to the grand list. And more importantly, to the TIF district.
Right, and can you elaborate on that a little bit when you say contributing to the grand list? This will be owned by the private sector
be-
entirely.
Yeah, they'll be entirely owned by the private sector, but they will be on the grand list in 2026 in some degree. It's actually the April 1. It's what is there in April 1 actually counts. So, but we know by 2027, April 1, that grand list will contain all of the property value represented in the red and the purple.
Right, but the main thing that you and I talked about the other day was that because it's owned by the private sector, even though it's in partnership with UVM, it has nothing to do with pilot programs or anything like that. It is full
all
freight,
taxable.
private taxable land, which is important for the TIF purposes that
So what, like the LLC agreement restricts it to like UVM employees and.
it's not what they've described to us is that it is a first
Oh,
first right essentially. So they've bought the ability to lease them first. if for some reason UVM doesn't make use of them, then the private entity gets to lease all the rest of them. So that's their arrangement.
And just something about that too, it's yes, there's sort of this sort of first crack at it for UVM affiliates, but what that would mean is that those UVM affiliates are not living somewhere else. So those other units that are, elsewhere in South Burlington or Burlington, it does alleviate housing for the general public, just not necessarily to move into these buildings. It pulls people out of other surrounding areas to an
decent,
extent.
Good economic impact for South Burlington.
Yes, I have a question. It says here apartments will hold nearly 500 beds. Does that assume they're all 1 bedroom or efficiencies?
The plans that we have seen are a combination of 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms, Donna.
Mhm.
I think the quote that Alana has there is from a little bit before the development plans, and I think that.
Right.
It's
So
not-
this is actually a press release for Catamount Run, so it's only referring to 295 units.
Got it. Okay,
Oh,
so all
okay.
the rest of it, including the UVM MC, is not part of that. And the pink buildings that are being developed at the same time would not be associated with
Mhm.
UVM. They're just additional dwelling units.
Yeah, one of the reasons I sort of asked that question, because I've heard this question before too, and wondering, like, if there's going to be a lot of kids in these units, like, where are they gonna send them to school? Because, or is that the reason for the zero energy modules? In anticipation that I just, it'd be nice to talk a little bit about, like, parents' concerns about issues of the schools. And I mean, I've heard various rumblings about people saying, oh, don't vote for the TIF because we don't want, that's going to take money away from the schools or something like that. And I think it's very important to establish, where the money's coming from, where it goes to, and does it have any effect at all on the schools? Because I said, gee, there's a lot of federal money there. I don't think you have anything to gain by voting down the TIF in terms of having more money for the schools.
Yeah, so the TIP district does benefit from the ed fund, but the specific school budget is where the TIP district lives is made whole by the state. So it's not an individual, it does not affect our school district. And what it does do is it builds revenue for the future. And, I think one of the things that is important to recognize is that South Burlington is a growing community. And I believe there was a recent article about the impact fee ordinance. And I think the nice thing is I think everyone from the school district to the city recognize that we want to be a welcoming community. So the school district and the city, but especially the school district, has been planning for demographic changes. And I know that we've participated since I've been here in at least 2 of those conversations. And the growth inside of City Center has always been included in those demographic projections. So I think that they have been, and I know, Paul, you represented the city on the most recent discussions.
Yeah, and we're sharing all of this information as it comes in, all of our projections with the school district, with their demographer, with the consultant who put together the impact fee, so that they've got realistic numbers, not just sort of long-term, but also where the bumps are going to be and where we're in, where let's say when these will come online. We've given them sort of a year by year
Buildings will be
projection.
subject to the impact fee?
The impact fees for school will take effect on July 1st for any permits submitted after that. So possibly the second grouping of them. And then, just to reiterate what you said at the very beginning to answer Donna's question, the TIF district is a reallocation of funds. It does not increase anybody's taxes. And so by inverse, if there's not the TIF projects, understand that the projects
I mean, I think we've yet to answer that question.
Right, well, hang on, hang
I'm
on.
still
Let me
waiting
finish
for
my,
that number.
let me finish my sentence. The, not having the TIF does not add to the revenue of the city because it's a reallocation of funds that are,
But for the TIF district, we wouldn't have this revenue coming in, period. So if we had not been investing in Market Street and investing in Garden Street and telling people, yes, we're going to create this additional transportation capacity in this area, we are not positive that that people would have chosen to build in South Burlington and at this location. So,
I mean,
Or
it's
as fast.
speculation, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
so
right, but, okay.
that, I mean, that's what the TIF district tool is to encourage growth and development and to create value. And to do it in a sustainable way.
So Andrew and I are both running for city council,
Yes.
and obviously we'll be asked about this as we're campaigning, a large bond issue like this. And I think Andrew's point is very important that we have that number. And
yes.
not just for
That's why I'm
us,
asking for it.
not just for us, but for the voters.
Yeah.
Before
Yes.
you write the ballot, I mean, we know that we have a date set where we have to have our information in for the ballots to be printed. Have you written the ballot?
Yeah, and I'll
initiative
show
for
it
this?
to you. And I can pull that, if you'd like, I can pull you that number, but I'd like to stop my presentation to pull the number. So,
Okay.
but I can give it to you
I think he's
afterwards.
still giving us information about what goes into that number still, so.
And the other question I had is affordability for these units.
Mhm.
Are they all affordable or?
Paul, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So the way that the developer of this core area chose to proceed was that they front loaded all the affordability. So they did Allard Square, they did Champlain Housing Trust, which is called
Garden apartments.
Garden Apartments. The Union Place that just opened is all affordable housing through Summit Housing. So they front loaded the affordable housing above and beyond the minimums of our regulations. Now comes the market rate component.
Okay.
So what is going to be built is market rate to complement them having built the affordable first.
And then, and so, I don't know, in city center, all projects over a certain size are required to have a certain percent or a certain threshold or percent of affordable housing. So we do.
Citywide now.
Citywide,
Yep.
okay, so there is inclusionary zoning, which requires affordable housing, and then.
They're substantially exceeding it, the minimums through what they've already built.
And then I would also say that the current existing legislation around Act 250 does incentivize, depending on your definition, but working force housing to be built inside of new town centers, which we are. So
Right. And that was the original idea, was
Yeah.
to build city center and protect the southeast quadrant.
So this has some of the numbers, not the number that you're looking for. And so I have those go into the numbers that build this, and I can very easily pull those out. So our model has two different projections for TIF district revenue. There, if everything builds out, and then if all development stops after the pipeline development is completed. And so over here, you can see this is our annual revenue from tax revenue and what we received in 2018 or fiscal year 2018, which is the first year that we collected revenue from the TIF district. And at the end of the life of the TIF district, or the end of the collection period for the TIF district, 2037, what we would estimate we would collect. So if everything develops if everything develops out that is developable within the TIF district, we estimate that the city would receive $5,922,110 that would go into the special fund. If only the existing development and pipeline were developed, that number would be around $3 million. So on an annual basis. And then if you look at the total increment for everything, it would be 47 million or 47.7 million, or for the existing development and pipeline, it would be 32.5 million. So, and that's over the life of the TIF district. So everything that goes into that. So that is made up of two numbers that are 75% of the municipal and 75% of the education. And I'm happy to give you those numbers.
And just.
I don't have them split out on
That's fine.
my,
And how does
yeah.
the 32 million compare to the total cash that we needed to pay off the bonds and interest?
yeah, so it's about 10 million short. It's like 9 point something short.
Oh,
Yeah. And so because of that, number one, we're going to be talking to a lot of developers and property owners in the remaining. We sort of have been spending a lot of time on our projects, but we will be spending a lot more time with the remaining property owners and
So,
projects.
Alana,
so
can
even
you,
all the, and this is,
can you just specify that a little bit? When you say it, can you talk about the two different lines here and what the it is
Yep.
precisely there? Because I think this is a really critical point.
Yeah, so all of the projected development. So the gap, and I'm just gonna see what I have on the next one. No. So the gap is around 9 million if all the development stops. So 32 million would not, in our estimation, because we
Does it-
haven't,
does that
we haven't
include the
issued the
pink?
debt.
does that include the pink?
No.
The pink is,
Yes, yes, that
is the
includes
pink in the
pink.
yellow or is the pink in the blue?
The pink is in the yellow.
They're right there. So
Yeah.
what's the stuff that's in the blue that's not in
So
the
the
yellow?
blue is, so we don't expect that development will stop with Snyder Braverman. In fact, our goal for the TIF district is that we're not just developing the property that was owned by South Burlington City Center LLC, but that other properties within the TIF district either develop or redevelop. And
Can we go back to the map just quickly?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like
yeah.
just like,
Before we go back to the map, you said there's a $9 million gap, but there's no gap if we have the blue number, right? Is that,
Correct.
just to be clear?
we have an excess of revenue if we have the blue number.
Just to be clear where the
Yes.
gap was.
Yeah.
right, but if you go to the map, what's the difference between yellow and blue?
So, back up. So the yellow is this part right here,
All the red, purple and pink stuff is already in
Correct.
yellow. Okay.
right? So then there are additional properties. So if we look at Heinsberg Road, there's several properties on Heinsberg Road that are developable or redevelopable or have room for infill development. There are many properties on San Remo Drive that are opportunities for redevelopment or infill development. And then there are some properties on Dorset Street / Williston Road, excluding the school district, that are opportunities for redevelopment or infill development. So if we take, or on Market Street.
And all the incremental tax from those, the city effectively gets 50% more of the revenue than we would otherwise get by having them in the TIF district. Is that true?
And I'm sorry, can you?
Just
repeat
going
that?
back to the very beginning of the conversation. By having the TIF district, we get to keep 50% more of that tax revenue than otherwise?
We get to keep that revenue and invest it in infrastructure. So we get to build Market Street, Garden Street, City Center Park, the shared use pass, the Williston Road streetscape, the bridge over the interstate in Garden Street. And we get to leverage a lot of federal funds using that money.
I'm
I,
sorry.
I think the distinction that
like-
Alana is
Yeah.
making from your question is rather than get, she's saying invest,
Right, but no,
because
we-
they're for
we
specific
hadn't
projects.
done this, right? The incremental
Mhm.
tax revenue, 50% of the tax revenue from those projected future, from that projected future development, instead of going to the state, we can use it to pay off these bonds. Is that the idea?
Hey, the borrowing.
Yes, yes,
It would otherwise,
Effectively,
if we
yes.
hadn't done this, it would otherwise go to the state. Because we're
yes,
doing this, that new revenue from this new development that may be in the future,
yeah,
we get to keep effectively by paying off the bonds.
yes,
Okay.
And I would add to it that the philosophy of a TIF is that if we had not done the investment, let's say in Market Street, that development that we're seeing all around it may never have existed.
Understand.
So
Yeah,
everybody wins by investing.
it's supposed to be a virtuous cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, your numbers are approximately correct there, I think, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna pull the
It's a rough
actual
number,
I'm
but
gonna give
yes.
you the actual, like our estimated numbers for both the blue and the yellow, so you can see them. For both the pipeline and the complete model.
And then school
Yeah.
versus city side.
Yeah, yes. Mhm. I actually, you know what? Let's see.
Do you want to finish your last couple slides before leaving this? Because I think
Sure.
you had a last couple of sort of rounding it out.
Yes, I can do that because, I just thought of a very easy place we can find that. So without me digging through my files. I'm not sure that I mentioned this before, but I want to be sure to mention this. All TIF debt is backed by the full faith and credit of the city. That means that if the TIF district revenue does not materialize, the city is still responsible for servicing debt regardless. And this is the question. So this includes all 4 projects. And it has the total amount, which is $15,086,430. It has the amount of TIF district debt that has been authorized by the community. And I would note about that 29,402 includes debt that the city issued but did not finance with TIF district revenue and will not be financing with TIF district revenue for this building. And so only 14,430,000, so that's Garden Street Phase 1, Market Street, this building. So a part of that debt was for this building, but not all of it. And so combined, the total amount of debt that the TIF district would carry would be 29 million and some thousands. So it'd be the 14.430 plus this debt, which is 15.43. I'm sorry, 15.086. So. And so this is the question. It is broken up into nice little paragraphs. And just to warn you, the last time we had a ballot printed, it was all 1 paragraph. So it may not look as nice on the ballot.
Alana, if you haven't talked about it, something you mentioned when you talked with the department heads was in this pipeline number versus the, anticipated, there's also the city center reserve fund that is a
Yes.
piece of that has already been planned for. Do you want to speak for that? Because it's not, you describe a gap, but a big chunk of that has already been
Mhm.
anticipated
Yeah.
if it doesn't, right?
So as part of the model, which will be provided at the beginning of February, updated, this is available to the public. It's been given to the council. We model all of our TIF debt that we have either taken out or anticipate taken out. So you see in orange what we've taken out. This is what the voters have approved but has not been taken out. And this is what is on the ballot. And so we model all of the debt moving forward. And you can see here what our percentages, what our interest rate that we're estimating we would have on the bond. And then we also model the terms that we anticipate would be requested. Although I would say that we would reserve the right, should the bond pass, that to look for the best terms and the best rates available and configuration of debt. So we may look at other things like the infrastructure fund. There's also a related cost which has been authorized. So the total TIF fund expenditures are 40.8. And so that includes interest, direct reimbursements for related costs, and the issuance of all the bonds. Or sorry, the principal on all the bonds. And so you can see here, this is the pipeline gap. This sort of looks at the annual balance. So you can see at the end, so we actually would be paying debt longer than 2037. So this shows you, so each year after 2037, as we make the last payments, and I can back up so you can see that they would, in 2036, they're actually quite substantial. We're paying off all the principal. This shows you what it would be at the end, not in 2037. I can give you that too. That's in the model. And so the gap is 8.1 million on the downside. Upside, we have 6.9 in revenue. So that would be
Understand that upside, that revenue then goes the normal way, presumably. We get a third, 2/3 goes to the education fund.
exactly
So that, okay, so that's kind of cushion for paying the debt. But other than that, is nothing to do with TIF. It just is regular revenue.
correct.
Okay.
At the end, so the fund, we will be looking at sort of projections of revenue. Once we finish incurring all the debt, they'll do a check-in with us every 5 years. And if they think we're going to overshoot it by a lot, we might start returning that revenue to the state earlier. But otherwise, we would just keep it until all the debt has been paid off or the fund has been zeroed out. And so once the money has been paid off, then we would return the excess to the state. So if all the development stops at 2026 or 2029, whenever Snyder Braverman is done developing, we don't have anything else. And we have a revenue shortfall. We also, one of the ways that we're managing our debt payments is using the capital reserve fund as a cushion. So every year, 800,000 has been contributed to it. In some years, it's been 860,000. I think with the pandemic, it sort of went down a little bit. And we've built it back up before, and we expect to build it back up in the future. But the cushion would be used to decrease sort of the overall exposure to a shortfall in revenue. So this shows in 2037 what that looks like, into what our deficit would be if we don't have any additional development. And then it also shows, so this is sort of taking the TIF fund plus the reserve fund, adding them all up, minus all of the costs that came out of them cumulatively over time. So is that the slide you're referring to? Okay, thank you. So more information, the public information notice will be coming out in February. Public information sessions, we actually have one on February 14th, hashtag Love Your City, from 6 to 7. So you can come and spend some time with us and learn more about both this, I'm sorry, not both, but this in addition to the overall city budget and the other bond vote article, which is on Bartlett Bay sewer plant. Our website also has information, and of course you can reach out to me with any questions that you may have. So, or send me any questions that you receive, and I'd be happy. We'll be putting together a fact sheet on this on our website, and we also will be doing a live Q&A and just, want to make sure that we're able to put out answers to questions that you may be hearing. So, and I think some of you have brought up some that you've heard already. So thank you.
Yes, if anybody has any follow-ons of things that you think that would be helpful to the voters, please don't hesitate to reach
But
out
I
to
think
Alana
we
or me. I'll
really
share it right with.
to isolate the incremental money that we get to keep. Right, I mean, because that, like, otherwise it's just like left pocket, right, and timing. But if we're actually getting more money, that would be really nice to know how much that is. The one other thing is, like, I'm just looking at the Vermont website and it says, once TIF ends, it says the base and the entire increase in property tax revenue are paid to the education fund in perpetuity. Is that
On the
different than-
state side and then the municipal side,
We still get that.
we get all the
Okay,
municipal
so
side.
that's
So,
just saying you just go back to
Right.
normal.
right, so in
okay, okay.
2038, the
Okay.
city is gonna
It's not
all of a
like it's
sudden
quid
see a
pro
really
quo, like,
nice,
we get more of it now, but they get more of it later.
just reverts to
Okay.
business as usual. So
Okay.
2038, the city side grand list that goes to the general fund is gonna get a really nice bump.
Okay,
Yeah, it just reverts to the prior.
What's the bump? What's the extra money?
yeah, what's the extra money and how does that compare to how much we're spending?
Hang on. one sec.
Well, do you want it now or do you just want? it to
Well,
send
at
you?
some point, I mean,
I see Michael packing up here, so I just want.
We're meeting,
I don't need my.
we're meeting next Monday too, right? So.
Okay, so this is the breakdown. This is from the substantial.
Hmm?
Tuesday.
Oops, sorry.
Versus Tuesday.
Okay, so, so in November
Tuesday.
2021, and this model is a little bit older, so I'll get you fresher numbers and I'll make sure that they show up in the public notice that will go out in February 1st. So these numbers, are a little bit older. They don't incorporate the Catamount Run, project. So this is the portion, the total, portion that we receive is 32,693,000. That was what was modeled at that time in
Not sure
November.
we're seeing the same screen you're seeing.
Oh, sorry.
30,
It doesn't have that
no,
number.
32.
What do you, hang on, I'm gonna reshare. I'm not sure what I'm sharing, so.
It's just stacked, but it didn't have that one.
Okay, I think. Yes, okay. So this is actually on the website. This is from the substantial change, and it shows the breakdown. And it actually sums everything up at the top. So it goes all the way down to 2037, starts in 2018. And, so right here, this is the breakdown and this is the summary at the top. And so the education portion that would go to TIF district is $32 million. And that's a full build out model, but before we incorporated Catamount Run. So the model that will go into the preliminary, the model that will go into the notice for the public for this bond vote will have a higher number than that number. So at the time this was written, our interest rate was much lower, but our development outlook is better. So
75% of the education portion, not 50%.
correct.
You said 50% because you said.
Right.
crazy.
I wasn't sure if it was like a,
32 million is the extra tax revenue that we're gonna get that we otherwise wouldn't get.
correct.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I like that.
You know, the reserve fund, that's 860,000 a year. Where does it stand now?
It's at about 3 million. So it's either a little bit below or a little bit above 3 million.
So on this chart, Alana, the 11 million that is column G, that is the municipal, that is money that if that development was going to happen anyway, is being reallocated to TIF. But would, to your point, Andrew, have been theoretically collected. And the 32 is money that otherwise would have been distributed statewide, but we get to use and invest here.
And that's based on the yellow or the blue, the 32.
The blue. But that's
Okay.
before I had the numbers for Catamount Run.
That's based on the blue. Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
32 and the blue was 49, or what was it? 47.
47.
So. Okay. It is a big percent. Yeah.
Nice job.
We'll see. Thank you. Yeah.
Already things that have been happening through this program.
Yeah.
Yes, it's pretty impressive.
But it is amazing and it's an incredible opportunity. I think,
I think it'd be good to present that number to the public in
Yeah.
in the materials, 32. And
Yeah,
it'd be good to know what it would be if it was just the yellow.
I will definitely update that.
and then
Thank you.
could that just be presented as like a range? Like-
Yes.
Like if no more development happened, we'd be kind of stuck at this number, but we
Mhm.
think it's probably,
This number.
I'm sorry.
That's
and
a great
So
point.
just again, so we think, I mean, let's say it was 47 and the yellow was 30 something, so I don't know, just say it's 75, let's say the number's like 75% of that, so I don't know, 20 million bucks.
Yeah.
So we're getting an extra 20 million and we're committing to spend. Not losing all these numbers, it was like,
15.
what?
29.
8,
Mm,
it's 8 is the gap. Like we're risking,
40,
we're
it was like
risking
40,
8
Right,
potentially
we're
to
spending
get.
40, the interest and debt.
Mhm.
We're getting another 20 that we wouldn't have otherwise had. And
Mhm.
so we're really taking 20 out of our general revenue to fund that 40. So
Mhm.
about half, roughly half of the investment is coming from dollars we otherwise wouldn't have had.
Mhm.
And roughly half is
Right.
coming from our general revenue. It's maybe,
Right.
I mean, just in my
Right.
head. but
And I know that, you know, the idea of does the investment spur the development is a little bit of a theoretical note, but at the same time, Market Street was in private sector hands and available for development for the last 35 years. It's when it physically got built that all the rest of this unleashed and started to
No, I hear what
happen.
you're saying. So even the 20 that I'm saying we're spending from our revenue, we may not have had that.
Right.
We might not have had that. So yeah,
Right.
okay.
And then, you know, long term, after the whole TIF is done,
We get to keep it all.
we get to keep it all for the life of these buildings. And for those who sat through the, you know, the Joe Minicozy, the type of development that is, you know, multi-story development that's mixed use is what funds municipalities
We don't
for,
Keep it all because what our municipal piece goes up.
well, it
Because
just, it reverts to normal. But what I'm saying is compact development like what is going to be on
Well, how
Market
does it-
Street.
How does it benefit us? By
The
reverting to
grand
normal?
list has been increased by
No,
the
but most of that
investments in
goes
the
to education
infrastructure.
fund. So is the municipal piece kind of frozen until
No.
TIF ends?
No, it's
Okay, just the
Right.
BAU. the
I just
municipal
mean
piece grows.
after TIF is done in 2037, we then reap, we and the state reap the benefits of the taxes collected on these multi-story buildings on one street forever in the future.
Right.
And that's another long-term investment that is, you know, that's what will help support all the city need long-term, because we have one street to maintain and all of this development and taxes coming from it. 2 streets.
Super good. Anything else, or can we move on to meeting minutes?
Let's not tell Andrew anything about the Burlington waterfront. Okay,
I'm willing to comment on that too.
it's okay.
Not tonight.
Okay. And I would just say that our TIF district was approved post the new stricter legislation. And so we have developed the TIF district with those regulations in mind, and had very consistent management over that period. So
Weren't we the last to be approved on the old regime?
no, we were approved under the newer one. So not the newest, but we were not approved under the same regime.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Lana. This was
Thank you.
very, very helpful.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the answers. Okay.
Good questions.
So we have meeting minutes from December 13th and January 10th.
I move to approve the minutes of December 13th and January the 10th as written.
Do we have a second? Andrew won the second. Any discussion?
I wasn't present for the 10th, so I won't vote on it.
Oh, please vote.
Yeah, I just
Donna?
have one comment. I was just reading it over. The steep slope construction, I made some comments about that. And I think it got a little bit misinterpreted. I didn't say that, you wouldn't have any destruction if you didn't do, massive leveling of sites to build on, but that there's a lot less destruction. So just to clarify that, because it said no destruction, and I'm like, no, there's going to be destruction. You build something on land, there's going to be destruction, but it's more minimized when you don't have to do a lot of land grading.
Okay, Donna, can you identify the page and which set of minutes, just so that Sue can correct that, and then if you want to.
Rephrase.
Well, I wish I had the page number. It was under the steep slope construction. I just
Donna, which set of minutes? January 10th?
13th. December 13th.
Okay, anything else? Okay, what?
Oh, do we have to wait for this to be changed?
So are you asking to amend the minutes, Donna, to include, to change that, or are you just making a note to everybody?
Just a clarification to the council.
So yes, you want to change the minutes, or no, you don't want to change the minutes?
No, it's not a really big point.
Okay, thanks.
Then we
Great.
can vote.
Okay, then all in favor of the minutes?
All right.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. Very good. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
I won't, don't worry.
Once we see where this goes, Tom, I'll be back.
Okay.
Because I'm not quite sure what affects our project.
Sure, well, happy to chat with you between now and, so the next step is to need to educate Pasadena City Council. If you would like to talk with us about how this specifically affects your property, happy to do that. And then, if you say this solve it, great. If you say it doesn't solve it, then please feel free to tell the council it doesn't solve it. No problem.
Okay.
So I suggest, why don't we meet before it gets to a council vote, so that you can, once it's adopted, it's not a lot.
Because I was looking at it, that's why I asked about the acre. So I'm not sure.
But your issue is about the bottom line. So
That's
the
good.
half acres made up.
Yeah.
I think, well, why don't you reach out to us later this week, and I can sit down.
I will, because it seems like, I mean, we're looking at things like political piles.
And this was about the thing. So I think that there is, I don't want to promise it, now sit down. I think that there is a correction, there is an amendment in here to address. Okay, so let's sit down. If it's not, then I want to make sure you've got the opportunity to say,
Yeah.
that this is not solved.
Thank
Okay.
you. You do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to talk.
Well, that's right. I find this to be very interesting.